The Adams Archive.
The Pentagon actually responded to the idea that Taylor Swift is a psyop. Now, personally, I think this probably couldn't be more accurate. And so the reason that I think this is actually a lot of a part of the public psyche today surrounding Taylor Swift. We see everything that's happening with Taylor Swift and Travis Kelsey and Pfizer, and her recently saying that she believes that Joe Biden has done a great job and will continue to do a great job, and he's exactly what our country needs right now to stop the divisiveness. Like that, the only way that you are saying such a thing, even if you voted for Biden and you wholeheartedly believed in him at the very beginning of this, I don't think there's a person out there who is not either protecting their ego by, not admitting that they are wrong, or are being paid off. And the likelihood that you're being paid off if you're a billionaire, as Taylor Swift is at this time, and a super famous actor, actress, musician, artist, whatever, is probably pretty high if you're still sitting there banging the drum of Joe Biden, or you're just worried about not getting another job again. So you go along with the river that is Hollywood. So it's crazy to see how far these people can go. So here we go. Let's go ahead and read this article. This article comes from the Post Millennial, and it is titled, let me go ahead and pull it up here for you. It is titled, Pentagon claims Taylor Swift Psyop speculation is a conspiracy theory. Okay. You have my attention. All right, this article says, after Jesse Waters' show on Tuesday, where he said the government has been turning Taylor Swift into an asset through a psyop, Pentagon spokesperson Sabrina Singh has denied the claim, an idea that first came from Human Events senior editor Jack Posobiec. Quoting from one of Swift's songs in a statement to Politics, Singh said, as for this conspiracy theory, we are going to shake it off. Wow, catchy. She continued to make other Taylor Swift puns in her statement, which stated, but that does highlight that we still need Congress to approve other supplemental budget requests as swiftly as possible so that we can be out of the woods with potential fiscal concerns. Haha. On December 6th, 2023, right after Taylor Swift won the Times Person of the Year award, Posobiec posted to X, the Taylor Swift girl boss psyop has been fully activated, and her hand-selected vaccine shill boyfriend to dink lifestyle to her upcoming 2024 voter operation for Democrats on abortion rights. It's all coming. And that was in response to the Time Person of the Year being Taylor Swift. And I'm pretty sure that used to be Man of the Year, and now it's Person of the Year? I don't know. Pretty sure I heard that. Following the post to X, Posobiec had Evita Duffy on his show, where they talked about why Swift could rally support for President Joe Biden in the 2024 election year. She's a girl boss. She has lots of failed relationships where she blames the man every time, Duffy then asked. Why are we pushing Taylor Swift? Here comes a clip from Jack Posobiec, and let's go ahead and watch it here.
Evita Duffy from The Federalist joins us now. Evita, they've just named Taylor Swift that's basically her song that was used for that ad, which is a mix of Taylor Swift and Barbie. Just named Taylor Swift Times Person of the Year. Out about a month ago, you had a great show where you talked about the Taylor Swift army coming online for the 2024 election. Is this what we're seeing now? Are they activating the Taylor Swift psyop?
Yeah, it's not just happening now. This has been happening for pretty much a year. They've been pushing Taylor Swift on us. The corporate media has these articles fawning over her. She's like the greatest thing that's ever happened to humanity. Meanwhile, her music's pretty mid. It's actually somebody actually did a breakdown of her music, and the melodies, she has like the same melody progressions over 20 different songs. She's always complaining about the same.
Okay, I'm going to have to question how old this girl is. if you're going to use the word mid, you better have been born pre or post 2000. You better be under the age of 23 if you're going to use the word mid. I'll just leave it at that. Anyways, I actually agree with this. So if you understand what TikTok did, when TikTok first started, TikTok artificially inflated the views. At least this is the idea that people have been talking about, is it took a few select amount of influencers and it artificially inflated the views that they were getting on the platform. Those people then, who felt like they were a big deal, went and talked to people about it and told people how many views they were getting on TikTok. As a result, a bunch of people fled into TikTok. And so what and they cared about the original few official people that got their views artificially inflated. I think one of the names of the girls is, I don't know, there was one girl that started TikTok as like the TikTok girl. Now, nobody really cares about her, right? She just did like a dance and whatever. And then all of a sudden she got like 1 billion views. And so the way that they did that is they artificially inflated the views. They artificially created celebrity. And then they made those celebrities' influence be valued by the mass public, right? And so I think that's exactly what happens with Taylor Swift here, I believe, because her music, to be fair, is pretty mid, although I cannot say that with a straight face and never will. But Taylor Swift's music is garbage. It's terrible. She's a great performer, and by performer I mean she has a great team of people around her with fireworks and laser shows and all of that. But Taylor Swift is a very unimpressive musician, completely unimpressive to me. And the fact that she is the single most highest earning musician of all musicians is astounding to me, because she's just a performer. Anyways, so that to me lends into the idea, the same way that we will look at this in a minute, is they artificially inflate these people's viewership. They get the mainstream media, the mainstream radio stations, the mainstream award shows to all pump these people up, pump them up. Meanwhile, these people are just puppets for whatever they say from the powers that be goes. And so that's where this idea of it being a psyop comes from. So let's finish out this clip if we can. Tolerate this girl's vocabulary, and then we'll continue on.
Breakups over and over again in these songs. Jake Gyllenhaal is somebody who she wrote the song All Too Well about, which is like a 10-minute song where she complains about a man that she dated for, no joke, 3 months. This is not a musical mastermind, and yet the media is pushing her on us constantly. And if you say anything negative about Taylor, the media, the Swifties, and Taylor Swift herself
Okay, I think I know what she's going to say.
A misogynist, and here's why I think that is. Taylor Swift is the perfect.
Okay, Taylor Swift's music is absolute trash. So the only way that she got into the position that she's in is if she's working with the government. So here's the rest of the article, and it says, and this was December 6th that this conversation happened on Real America's Voice. But it says, Waters posted a clip of his segment to X on Wednesday where he said an idea was floated at a NATO meeting in 2019 where Swift could combat online misinformation. So maybe here's some actual evidence of this potentially.
Taylor Swift's the biggest star in the world. Sorry, Gutfeld. She's been blanketed across the sports media entertainment atmosphere. The New York Times just speculated she's a lesbian. And last year's tour broke Ticketmaster. A tour that's revenue tops the GDP of 50 countries.
Wow.
I mean, I like her music. She's all right. But I mean, have you ever wondered why or how she blew up like this? Well, around 4 years ago, the Pentagon's Psychological Operations Unit floated turning Taylor Swift into an asset during a NATO meeting. What kind of asset? A psyop for combating online misinformation. Listen.
You came in here wanting to understand how you just go out there and counter an information operation. Well, the idea is that social influence can help encourage or promote behavior change, so potentially as like a peaceful information operation. I include Taylor Swift in here because she's, she's a fairly influential online person. I don't know if you've heard of her.
Yeah, that's real. The Pentagon Psyop unit pitched NATO on turning Taylor Swift into an asset for combating misinformation online. This is nothing new. In the 1950s, the government strong-armed Louis Armstrong into doing propaganda tours across Africa. The CIA did the same thing with jazz singer Nina Simone, except they did it without her really knowing. In the 70s, Nixon enlisted Elvis in his war on drugs. He gave the king a badge and named him a covert federal law enforcement agent. Michael Jackson was tapped by Reagan, using his song Beat It in his public service campaigns against teen drinking and driving. Michael Jackson persuading minors not to drink. Anyway, so is Swift a front for a covert political agenda? Primetime obviously has no evidence. If we did, we'd share it. But we're curious, because the pop star who endorsed Biden is urging millions of her followers to vote. She's sharing links. And her boyfriend, Travis Kelsey, sponsored by Pfizer. And their relationships boosted the NFL ratings this season, bringing in a whole new demographic. So how's the PSYOP going? Well, as usual, Biden's not calling the shots because he doesn't even know who Taylor Swift is. He's confused her with Britney Spears and Beyonce.
You could say even this harder than getting a ticket to the Renaissance tour or Britney's tour. She's down in, it's kind of warm in Brazil right now.
Former FBI agent Stuart Kaplan.
That is brutal.
Joins us now. Stuart, is this
Britney Spears
feasible?
Jesse, the deployment of a PSYOP in the United States in this day and age is still illegal. The national security law prohibits the deployment
just like
of
everything
PSYOPs
else
or
they
using
do.
an operative for psychological warfare. However, if I was running Biden's management perception team, I would identify someone who would align themselves with my agenda, such as a Taylor Swift, who has close to 600 million followers. I would target her, I would engage her, and I would get her to do what we used to see as like public service announcements. And that type of enlistment, that type of solicitation is analogous to the old days of deployment of a PSYOP. And so in modern times, with these people having such influence and such, immeasurable amount of followers, she can potentially single-handedly swing voters because of just the amount of followers that she potentially can influence. So the answer is yes, Jesse.
Yeah, because when...
Wow. And I completely agree, right? We see even back historically between Elvis and Louis Armstrong, this has been done before. This isn't a new tactic. And so as we go on, we'll see. And I wanted to kind of preempt this for you. And he talked about it a little bit with Travis Kelsey. And even behind that was the TikTok. There was a whole trend around the Travis Kelsey, Taylor Swift relationship situation on TikTok, right? People were going crazy. Girls were making jokes to their husbands and their boyfriends, and those were going viral. And I talked about this last time, is if anything is going quote unquote viral and you think it's organic, the likelihood of that is probably low. If it's the number one most popular trend at the time, it's very likely that was at least in some way, shape, or form, even allowed potentially, if that's the word you want to use, instead of being stifled, they at least allow it to happen because it fits their agenda. And if it didn't fit their agenda, they would slap it with a big misinformation, disinformation, or at the very least, they would shadow ban the content. And so we know that at this point. And as we start to look at more around this, I guess there's even more situations, but it says, and I wonder if we can look at the response, but that was crazy. The fact that the Pentagon PSYOP organization within the Pentagon actually came and pitched the idea. They pitched the idea that they could use Taylor Swift to conduct a PSYOP against the American people. That's actual footage available right now. I had no idea before watching that, and that is just crazy. So as we go back in history, I wanted to start to have a discussion surrounding this and see historically what ways has art and culture been manipulated by governmental forces to align their agenda with yours. And so we can go back and we can look at this in a few different ways. And historically, there has been not only Elvis and Louis Armstrong, but historically there's been many governments that have done this, from Nazi Germany. And I listed a few here after doing some research. And under Adolf Hitler, the Nazi regime used music as a propaganda tool to reinforce its ideologies and suppress any opposing or non-Germanic cultural expressions. Jewish musicians and composers were not only banned from performing, but many were also persecuted and sent to concentration camps. The regime particularly promoted classical composers like Richard Wagner and Ludwig van Beethoven, who were seen as epitomizing Aryan and Germanic culture. Music played a pivotal role in Nazi rallies and events, being used to evoke emotions of pride and nationalistic fervor among the masses. Hitler Youth was also heavily indoctrinated with music that promoted Nazi ideology. So there's one. The Soviet government, under Joseph Stalin, reinforced strict control over the arts, including music. Composers like, Dmitry Shostakovich and Sergei Prokofiev faced severe restrictions and were often compelled to adapt their compositions to fit the state's demands for music that glorified socialism and the Soviet state. The government established the Union of Soviet Composers, which played a key role in censoring music and ensuring it adhered to the principles of socialist realism. Music that was considered formalist or bourgeoisie, I don't know if I pronounced that right at all, was condemned, and composers risked persecution if their work did not align with state ideologies. You even go back to Footloose, right? If you eliminate music, it has an effect. There's a reason that we sing in church. There's a reason that every religion across every country, across every historical time frame ever incorporates music, because music influences the mind. And so if you can make one person the most influential musician in the world and then utilize them as a puppet to parrot the opinions that you want them to hold that align with your agenda, why wouldn't you do that? The Cultural Revolution in China is another example. Mao Zedong's Cultural Revolution sought to eradicate Chinese traditional culture, including its rich musical heritage. Western classical music was also banned. Instead, the government promoted revolutionary music, particularly the 8 model operas that were sanctioned by Zhang Qing, Mao's wife. Those operas and revolutionary songs were designed to glorify the Communist Party, Mao Zedong's leadership, and the revolutionary spirit of the Chinese people. This was part of a broader attempt to reshape Chinese culture and align it with the Maoist ideology. And another example, people have talked about this before. I'm not sure if there's any evidence of this, just the same way that we can't say there's any evidence that Taylor Swift's a psyop. But people have talked about how when it comes to black culture in the late 1980s, talking about how rap music, and not particularly any type of rap music, but I guess particularly a type of rap music, which was the, the violent and drug-riddled, gang promoting type of rap that became popular. And we even see this today with the Travis Scotts, how much Satanism is incorporated into our music scene today. It's bizarre, but it's not bizarre because it's intentional. And so when you go back to the 80s, even the times where the government was literally pushing crack cocaine into the ghetto areas, low-income black communities, the very same time that rap music became what it was, and I love rap. I even love late 90s or early 90s rap about gangster shit and drugs and gang stuff, but like you can't deny the fact that it influences culture. It influences how people act. It influences how people want to be when they grow up. What makes them cool? What type of clothes should they wear? What should they aspire to? Well, when all you hear about in music is selling drugs, making a bunch of money, how good they make you feel, and the type of girls that you get when you do it, what do you think you're going to do? Right? It goes hand in hand. Culture is music, and music creates culture. And so this goes on and on. I have other ones which talks about the apartheid South Africa. During the apartheid era, the South African government used music as a tool to support its racial segregation policies. Cambodia used it. Iran after the 1979 revolution. North Korea. In North Korea, music is used as a tool as state propaganda to an extreme degree. All music in the country is strictly controlled by the government. Why? Why would they do that? They wouldn't. And of course they wouldn't do that here in the United States of America with us free people, right? Our government would never do that. Songs are written in North Korea to glorify the Kim family and the Workers' Party of Korea, often incorporating themes of loyalty, patriotism, and devotion to the leaders. Music is used in schools, workplaces, and public events to instill loyalty to the regime and reinforce its ideologies. There is virtually no exposure at all to international music, and creating or listening to non-state approved music can result in severe penalties. And when we talk about severe penalties in North Korea, we're talking about generational imprisonment. Not just you go to jail, but your sister, your brother, your mother, and your next three generations go to jail. Like horrible, horrible stuff. And so music has always been utilized as a weapon by governments. Always. And to assume that we're just so far along that our government would never do that. They would never utilize our culture, our music, our art, our movies against us in a way that would not be in our best interest. No, they just let us do whatever. And wherever our culture goes, they're perfectly okay with it. Yeah. Okay. And again, this is going to be an unraveling for everybody. And I think this is maybe a really good next one that we can get into as a society, as we've already unraveled the pharmaceutical industry, the medical industrial complex, the government, the politicians, the big money, the lobbying funds. All of that has happened. Now, as a society, I think it's time for us to realize that our culture has been infiltrated for decades. The music you listen to, the movies that you watch, the TV shows on Netflix, the articles that you read, the news media that you take in, every single piece of it, the art that you consume, the art on your walls, all of it. The most famous artists have historically, in some way, shape, or form, and we go back to even the idea of postmodernism. Postmodernism is a somewhat new artistic theme, and we're seeing that artistic theme play out today in our own culture. Culture is shaped by art. So that's where they start, right? Postmodernism is the idea that there is no true reality. You have your truth, I have my truth, and there's no 2 + 2 = 5. And so when you realize that that's what they want to instill in your subconscious so that consciously you accept it when they tell you that a male is not a male. A male is a floating soul with no gender binary, and women are just women, and you can just declare it by standing on top of a desk and saying, I'm a woman now, even if you don't have ovaries or the ability to reproduce. So that's postmodernism in action. And that's one way that they took art and implemented that subliminal idea into your subconscious so that later it can be activated and weaponized against you. And so you could say, okay, I don't know any examples of that, Austin. I couldn't imagine our CIA working alongside artists. Well, let me clue you in, my friend. For decades in art circles, it was either a rumor or a joke, but now it is confirmed as fact. The CIA used American modern art, including the works of such artists such as Jackson Pollock, Robert Motherwell, William de Kooning, and Mark Rothko. Right? Oh, a Rothko, right? You know, like the pretty sure that's like the square and a circle or whatever, as a weapon in the Cold War. Interesting. In the manner of a Renaissance prince, except that it acted secretly, the CIA fostered and promoted American abstract expressionist paintings around the world for more than 20 years. The connection is improbable, This was a period in the 1950s and 60s when the great majority of Americans disliked or even despised modern art. President Truman summed up a popular view when he said, "If that's art, then I'm a Hottentot." What is a Hottentot? As for the artists themselves, many were ex-communists, barely acceptable in the America of the McCarthy era, and certainly not the sort of people normally likely to receive U.S. government backing. Why did the CIA support them? Because in the propaganda war with the Soviet Union, this new artistic movement could be held up as proof of the creativity, the intellectual freedom, and the cultural power of the United States. Russian art, strapped into the communist ideological straitjacket, could not compete. So basically what the idea was that our artists, the way of capitalism is just so much better than everything else. This free expression, the environment of freedom and democracy and all of this stuff is so amazing that we just allow brains to thrive. And artistic expression is just so much better here in the United States. And so they took upwards of $20 million and purchased this art specifically to prop up. It's like if they funneled money into U.S. companies through shell companies so that they could say that, oh, but look at our democracy, our organizations, our shell companies are so much more successful than Russian companies because look at how much money they have. Well, you gave them the money so you could make that argument. That's the whole point. The existence of the policy, rumored and disputed for many years, has now been confirmed for the first time by former CIA officials. Unknown to the artist, the new American art was secretly promoted under a policy known as the long leash. Arrangements similar in some ways to the indirect CIA backing of the journal Encounter, edited by Stephen Spender. The decision to include culture and art in the U.S. Cold War arsenal was taken as soon as the CIA was founded in 1947. Dismayed at the appeal communism still had for many intellectuals and artists in the West, the new agency set up a division, the Propaganda Assets Inventory, which, at its peak, could influence more than 800 newspapers, magazines, and public information organizations. They joked that it was like a Wurlitzer jukebox. When the CIA pushed a button, it could hear whatever tune it wanted to play across the entire world. The next key step came in 1950 when the International Organizations Division was set up under Tom Braden. It was this office which subsidized the animated version of George Orwell's Animal Farm, which sponsored American jazz artists, opera recitals, the Boston Symphony's Orchestra International Touring Program. Its agents were placed in the film industry, in publishing houses, even as travel writers for the celebrated Fodor Guides. And we now know it promoted America's anarchic avant-garde movement, abstract expressionism. Initially, more open attempts were made to support the new American art. In 1947, the State Department organized and paid for a touring international exhibition called Advancing American Art, with the aim of rebuting Soviet suggestions that America was a cultural desert. But the show caused outrage at home, prompting Truman to make his Hottentot remark and one bitter congressman to declare, "I am just a dumb American who pays taxes for this kind of trash." The tour had to be canceled. The U.S. government now faced a dilemma. The Philistinism, combined with Joseph McCarthy's hysterical denunciations of all that was avant-garde or unorthodox, was deeply embarrassing. It discredited the idea that America was sophisticated, culturally rich democracy. It also prevented the U.S. government from consolidating the shift in cultural supremacy from Paris to New York since the 1930s. To resolve the dilemma, the CIA was brought in. Very interesting. Now this goes on and on and on. This is an article written by independent.co.uk, and the title of it is "Modern Art Was CIA Weapon," and it was written on Sunday, the 22nd, October of 1995. Super interesting article. I absolutely think that you could dive into more of the history of that, but I just want to give you that background. That's just one aspect of it, where our CIA has been a part of influencing culture through art. Now we can go into the next part of this, which is called Operation Mockingbird. And Operation Mockingbird was the hand-in-hand CIA operation between journalists, news networks, and Hollywood. And I myself need to do a deeper dive into this, but I had just recalled about this when talking about the Taylor Swift conversation. And honestly, I didn't think this conversation would go that long. I usually have some warm-up articles sometimes before I get into the deep stuff. But man, this is so interesting to me that I think we could probably sit here for 5 hours and talk about this. But it really is a culture death. You go back and listen to music. Go back and listen to Led Zeppelin. Go listen to AC/DC. Go listen to any of the great musicians of the 1970s and early 80s before the fingertips of the CIA started to get into our music. And we have done nothing but go downhill as a society musically. There's very few examples that you can give me that would even rival any of that. The very first, I'll give you a side story, go down the memory lane real quick. When I was maybe, 8 to 10 years old, probably, my grandparents took me on a train ride to Chicago from Detroit to go see my cousins. And I had just gotten for the train ride a new Walkman. I believe it was a gray Sony Walkman. And my dad took me to go get my very first CD for my Walkman. And I ended up getting the Led Zeppelin discography. So all I listened to for probably 6 months was every Led Zeppelin song ever. And that is still to this day my favorite album. I have the vinyl upstairs right now that I've listened to. Greatest band of all time, in my opinion. Anyways, trip down memory lane. So we have had a cultural death, an artistic death here in the United States that has been unfolding for decades. You even want to talk about architecture, and I would love to do an interview with somebody who could speak more on this because I'm not an architect and I don't know the history of architecture. But to me, you go back and you look at Roman times, Greek times, go back and look at the Gothic eras and go back and look at the pyramids. Go back and look at any history of time in the last 2,000 years, and you will see, if you took a time machine every 100 years, you would see beautiful architecture, cathedrals, and political buildings, and courthouses, and schools, and all of these things are so beautifully created because when people used to create architecture, they used to do it to please the gods. They used to do it because there's a frequency within the building that you're in. And when you walk up to it and go through that door, there's a feeling that should be associated with that. And that is dead in the United States. Go drive your car around, and the only thing you're going to see is a box and a box and a bigger box and a taller box and a wider box. And you drive your box by the boxes, and you see the boxes, and you walk home to your box, and you open up the box door to get into your box room, to go into your box kitchen, to create something in your box oven and pull something out of the box fridge to it's an endless cycle of squares in our culture, in our architecture. And it's so sad to me to see that that's what we live in today. And so when we look at whether it's Project Mockingbird, whether we look at the CIA working hand in hand with the art within the Cold War, whether we talk about the historical aspects of music, there has been nothing but death of creativity in the United States. Every piece of culture that has been brought here has slowly dwindled and died. And it seems to me like it died at the hands of the organizations that are being funded by our tax dollars so that they can diminish our creativity and so that they can control your subconscious. And I think bringing it full circle back around to Taylor Swift is that's exactly what has happened here. And now I do have a full article on the Project Mockingbird. Let's see how far are we into this. Wow, we did 38 minutes on Taylor Swift. So I think we can move on, but I did find a Substack article because it was actually a little bit interesting. It's called Media Manipulation and Operation Mockingbird. It was written October 14th, 2024, and it is from the Revealed Eye Substack, so revealedeye.substack.com. And it looks like they do a pretty, I don't know, decent breakdown. I haven't read through it all yet, but I think 38 minutes on media manipulation and Taylor Swift is probably a good start. So on your own time, feel free to go watch that. Here's a quick video on Project Mockingbird, then we'll move on.
Real concern that planted stories intended to serve a national purpose abroad came home and were circulated here and believed here. Because this would mean that the CIA could manipulate the news in the United States by channeling it through some foreign country. Now, we're looking at that very carefully.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are
This is
contributing
from a House Intelligence Committee in
to
1975.
a major circulation American journal?
We do have people who submit pieces to American journals.
Do you have any people paid by the CIA who are working for television networks?
This, I think, gets into the kind of getting into the details, Mr. Chairman, that I'd like to get into in executive session.
At CBS, we had been contacted by the CIA. As a matter of fact, by the time I became the head of the whole news and public affairs operation in 1954, the ships had been established, and I was told about them and asked if I'd carry on with them.
We have quite a lot of detailed information, and we will evaluate it, and we will include any evidence of wrongdoing or any evidence of impropriety in our final report and make recommendations.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to the national news services, AP and UPI?
Well, again, I think we're getting into the kind of detail, Mr. Chairman, that I'd prefer to handle in executive session.
Senator, do you think that you named the news?
So the answer is yes.
That remains to be decided.
I think it was entirely in order for our correspondents at that time to make use of CIA agent chiefs of station and other members of the executive staff of CIA as sources.
All right, so there you have it. You can go read through the article there, find it on Substack, revealedeye.substack.com.
The Adams Archive.